No. Okay, what about now? Yes? Okay, great. Wonderful. Is my voice coming in through clear, or is it kind of muffled?
Yeah, it's clear.
We're good? Okay, cool. Amazing. All right, we got 6 people on. Hopefully that number doubles by, not doubles, times 10, multiplies by 10. I don't know what how would you say? You can say like tripled, quadrupled, centupled. What would be the 10 number? I have no idea.
So dectupled?
Dectupled. Hopefully this number dectuples in the next 5 minutes. So that way we're up to par with what we've been seeing the last couple of calls here. We've got 2 really amazing speakers, so I'm super pumped about that. All right, so I'm gonna put myself on mute and stop my video, and we'll get started in 3 minutes. Is that Kyle Smith I see in this call? Like the Kyle Smith from the Central Region?
No. I'm signed into his. Yeah, I'm signed into his Zoom actually. I just joined the code. To be honest.
What's that?
I just joined so I could get the code to get on my laptop.
Oh, cool. Well, that's not a problem. It's always exciting when we see DVMs on the call. Makes me feel special.
He's actually a DVC, so.
Well, you know, what's one letter?
Yeah. I always make fun of him for it. All right, now I'm on.
I'm sure he appreciates that. All right, looks like our numbers are doubling, soon to be tripling. Hello, Christina. I have not forgotten to respond to text. Thank you for following up with me. I appreciate it. We're gonna get started in 2 minutes here, everybody. 2 minutes. If you know a friend of yours is supposed to be on the call and they're not on the call, shoot them a text and tell them to be on the call. All right, 2 minutes.
Hey.
Hey, Jacob, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, how was class?
It was good. Had biocalculus.
Wow, sounds horrible.
Yeah, it was fun.
What's your major?
Molecular and cellular biology.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
That sounds like a tough major.
Yeah, one more semester though, and I'm out of here.
You're out of here now. Are you gonna go DM or are you gonna
go in DM?
Cool. That biomolecular information will really.
Oh yeah. 100%.
I was never a science person, as you can probably tell by my ridiculous comments I'm making right now.
Yeah. That's funny.
All right. 1 minute here and we'll get started.
Sweet.
Okay.
Yo.
Hello, Michael Foreman. Nice
Mr.
to
Foreman.
meet you.
What is up?
Not much.
All right.
Shelby, you're going out of town tomorrow, right?
I am leaving for my honeymoon. Hey.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Tulum, I heard?
Tulum, yeah. So we were supposed to go to Thailand, but with the coronavirus and everything, we decided that our best bet was probably to just avoid that area.
Yeah.
So if you've been following along my Instagram stories, you know that I've come up with a really clever caption for all my Instagrams, which means traded the coronavirus for a Corona beer.
There you go.
It's gonna get me a lot of likes. It's gonna be great. All right, we're gonna get started here, everybody. Just make sure that we are recording. We're good. You all know I've been having some technical difficulties with Zoom, but the last call was great. So, or not the last call. Definitely not the last call, but we now have everything figured out. So we're going to be good to go on this call here. First, I want to say thank you for everybody who've been jumping on consecutively. I really appreciate your commitment to growth. I'm going to mute. I really appreciate your commitment to growth. It makes my job a lot easier when people show up to learn, to grow, to ask questions, to join in on the conversation. And one thing that I want to really encourage all of you to continue doing is using the chat feature. This is a great way to, again, just keep engaged. So when you're hearing something that you feel like is really valuable, writing a nugget or I love that or whatever, it not only keeps me motivated to keep feeling good, but it helps everybody else kind of keep engaged. They start to zone out, they open up their browser, all of a sudden their Facebook friending, they're just kind of listening to my voice in the background. Hearing that little ding from the chat box can sometimes bring people back into the zone, or seeing that little, orange color pop up can bring people back into the zone. The second thing that I want to mention as it pertains to really getting the most out of the Branch Impact group is utilizing the Facebook group. Right now, I am the only one that's posting in it, except for those who are commenting on my post. And that's fine, I get that, I expect that. However, I do want to encourage you all to use that space as a place to ask questions, to share ideas. If you come across an article or a TED Talk or something that you're watching for your own good and for your own personal development, and you think, you know what, this would probably be really valuable to all the other branches, I encourage you to come to that space and share it. And that just really helps the entire group. And I know that there's a competition going on this summer. Obviously, not everybody can win the Silver Cup, but when it comes to sharing information, that's really what we're all about here in Vector. So don't be afraid to share in the Facebook group, ask questions in the Facebook group. That is your place for you to really come in and to grow. All right, so we're gonna get started here on today's message. And I'm really excited about what February is all about, because it takes what we learned in January and it evolves it to the next stage. So if you were plugged into the January calls, you probably remember that much of the calls and much of the content in the group was all about habits that build you into a productive human being and a productive manager. What we're going to be talking about in February is all about bringing awareness to and understanding the specific skills and systems that will build you into a dynamic leader. So we're moving away from you as the individual and we're moving into you as the leader. And so we're going to be talking a lot about group dynamic. We're going to be talking a lot about building a culture. We're going to be talking a lot about how to generate and to create and to hone emotional intelligence. And I think it's really important that I pause here for a second and give you all a disclaimer. What we're going to be covering today, it is the surface level of the whole idea of becoming a leader and learning about emotional intelligence. And my goal with all of these calls is to not teach you every single thing as it pertains to that one particular topic, but it's to bring awareness to you that these particular topics, these traits, these skills, these lessons are all really valuable to learn as you're preparing to become a branch manager. And so once you have that awareness, it is then up to you to do the extra digging and to buy the books or find the podcast or ask questions. Again, if you don't understand something, that's okay. Utilize the Facebook group to ask questions. Hey, Shelby, in the last call, you mentioned this particular thing about emotional intelligence. I've been focusing on doing that, but I'm finding that this is really difficult. Can you help me out with that? That kind of question is so valuable to ask in our group space, because there are likely 10 other people that have the same question as you, but they're maybe a little nervous or they're afraid to ask that question in a group forum. So I encourage you to be the one who steps up and asks and practices vulnerability and says, hey, I'm looking for some advice here. So just a reminder, what we're going to be talking about today is the surface level. We'll go about 6 inches deep. It's up to you to keep on digging and to keep on growing and to keep on learning. Now, I want to remind you all, Ben, I don't think that is I think that's probably on you, not on us. Everyone can hear me correctly, right? All right, cool. All right, so over the course of the next few weeks, you will learn about the specific skills and systems that motivate and encourage you to put your people first. while also focusing on the necessary inputs of the business that drive the bottom line. So we're taking what we talked about in our last call, where we talked about those inputs and the outputs, and we're bringing in this idea of the service first mindset, the idea of becoming a leader of your people. And we're going to marry the two together so that you can truly understand how being a leader and being a manager and then running a business all fit very nicely together like a puzzle piece, or I guess 3 puzzle pieces. So you'll begin to create a vision for the team that you are going to build, and you will also identify how you will show up as the leader for each and every individual, and then the team as a collective. I really hope that you are all taking advantage of the worksheets that I am putting into the Branch Impact page. If you look at the right-hand section of the page, you'll see a place where it says tags. And if you look at that tag, or look at those tags, you'll see a tag that says worksheets. If you click those, you will find all the different worksheets that I upload every single week. The one from last week was all about journaling and creating a vision for your team. And so I hope that you've done that. If you haven't, make a note for yourself to do that, because it's really helpful to just jot down some initial thoughts about what your team is going to look like, because it helps you begin to develop what your leadership style is going to be when you can really envision who it is that you're actually leading. Now, today's call specifically is going to be focusing on the people skills, which will lay the groundwork for the next call, where we'll be focusing on building culture in your office. I hear all the time branches come to me and say, Shelby, I want to build this really awesome culture. And I said, okay, great. Where are you going to start? And then that's about it. And they don't really have a good definition or idea of the components that go into culture. So we're going to talk all about that in our call on February 27th, which is, by the way, a new date. Originally it was on February 25th, but we moved it 2 days just because I get back from my honeymoon on the night of the 24th. So I want to make sure that I can really prepare for all of you guys. So it'll be February 27th. It's a Thursday at 4 p.m. All right, so the first thing we're going to start on today's call is about the mindset as it pertains to your people skills, your interpersonal skills, and your leadership skills. So I think the first thing that we need to do as it pertains to mindset is to establish the difference between a manager and a leader. And I shared with all of you in our last call about the importance of kind of acting as if and making the decision to be the branch manager today as opposed to wait to earn the title in May. I think it's also important to understand that you have the ability to step into your leader role today as opposed to waiting until April or May when you open up. So the thing to know is that a successful business owner needs to be both a strong leader and a strong manager to get their team on board, to follow them towards their vision of success. So again, a successful business owner needs to be both a strong leader and a strong manager to get their team on board, to follow them towards their vision of success. So what's the difference? Well, the leader, you are the visionary, and the manager executes on the vision. So you wear both of these hats, and they're both incredibly important. When you're wearing your leader hat, you're talking big picture. You're getting excited and emotional about what it is that you're building. And when you're wearing your manager hat, you're getting into the nitty-gritty and you are driving production. And I think the manager is really focused on the input, and the leader continues to hone that output. So the manager focuses on the objectives, and the leader focuses on the relationships. I'm gonna say that again. The manager focuses on the objectives, and the leader focuses on the relationships. And the reason why I say that is because when you're thinking about the vision, well, I would hope that the vision encapsulates the people. And when you're focusing on execution, that encapsulates the systems and the process. So that's why the leader focuses on the relationships. And when you can learn to be both the manager and the leader, you will create the greatest results. Much of what we talked about in January was focused around habits that will make you into a more efficient and productive manager. So again, remember, if you haven't yet watched the January calls, I highly recommend that you do that. And if you have watched them, re-watch them, because I recorded them twice because of Zoom. But anyways, we talked a lot about the habits and the mindset that helps you become a productive manager. Today, we're going to be talking about what it means to become an effective leader. In the vector world, a leader is someone who understands that they are serving their people. It is not the other way around. It's having a confidence in knowing that the better you serve your people, the more your people and the office will grow and flourish. So going back to what we talked about in the last call, this input and this output mindset, understanding that your people are a big part of the input. Sure, your vision encapsulates the output, and your vision has components of the CPO, it has components of the income, and then it has components of the recruiting, AKA your people. And those people are what drive your vision forward and what drive your ideal outcome. And so it's really important to recognize that a leader is someone who knows that they are serving their people. It's not the other way around. Now, I say that, and I know that you've all heard that. And I know that you understand theoretically this idea of having a people before profit mindset, like someone just mentioned in the chat. However, I also know from experience, and I'm sure Grant and Jacob can probably touch on this during the Q&A session, that it can sometimes be a lot harder done than said. And in times of adversity, when you're a branch manager, which again, we've talked about this, adversity will come. It's really hard to focus on your people when you're becoming obsessed with the lack of results due to adversity. So I want you to recognize that while this is a concept that I know you've heard before, it's not an easy concept to fully live into. And it's a mantra that is really worth repeating over and over again, and again, becoming aware of and seeing how right now in this month and next month, how can you begin to really embody a service-oriented mindset? Can you do something out of the sake for helping others and not how it's going to help you? That's a really good challenge to take on, to release the need for recognition, to release the need for results, and instead to focus on your desire to help others. That's a good way to practice embodying this mindset. Now, there are a couple of components of the service-first mindset that I believe as you begin to learn, it'll make everything a little bit more easier for you to just naturally go towards. So I'm going to cover these 5 components of the service-first mindset, and we're going to break it down in a few different ways. So the first way we're going to talk about it is which technical area of the business does this certain component most affect and elevate. You've all heard me touch on mindset, technical skill set, and tactical skill set, right? We talked a lot about mindset in our first call. We also mentioned the importance of technical skill sets, and then the tactical skill sets. Those are things that kind of give you the edge. What we're going to do in this next little portion here is we're going to talk about how these components of a service-first mindset elevate the effectiveness of certain technical areas of the business. And the reason why we talk about this at length is because the technical areas are so important to master, not even to master, but to really understand and at least grasp. And when you can begin to layer on top of that the service-oriented mindset, you will actually elevate the intended results of that technical skill set. Now, let me know if that's confusing for you, and we can go back and kind of dig through it again during the Q&A session when it's just you guys and me. So the second thing we're going to cover during these components here is how this component manifests as a manager. And the third thing we're going to cover is how this component manifests as a leader. Now, you will all see what I'm talking about in just 1 minute here. So 5 components to a service-first mindset. Number 1 is time. Being able to give your team time and attention. That is the most important component to understand as it pertains to service-first mindset. Time is your most valuable component, and it's also one that in today's time doesn't come around all so often. Everybody is distracted these days with their cell phones, with their drama, with the things that are going on in their head. And so if you can really commit to giving your people your time and attention, you will see results come in tenfold. So how does time show up in the technical areas of your business? Well, you can argue that it shows up in every area of your business, right? Because putting time and focusing time on all different areas is valuable. But when it comes to your people, I think it would be considered in the PCs and the PDI. These are the two areas right here that are most important for your time, because that's where you have the one-on-one attention and relationship with your people. Now, how does that help you become a better manager? How does giving time to your people and your PCs and your PDI help you become a better manager? Well, because you're actually giving them time and you're limiting distractions, you have the time to help your team execute on their goals. PDI and PCs are not just about checking in with your people, they're about hearing your people, learning what their goals are, and then helping them create a plan to execute on them. So when you actually put the time in your schedule and you focus on giving your attention to your people, you allow yourself the time to help them map out their goals. How does it manifest as a leader? Well, when you give yourself the time, you can paint the bigger picture and encourage enrollment in the team vision. So in a PC, you have the manager hat on, where you're focusing on creating a plan of execution, and then you have the leader hat on, where you're focusing on the bigger picture and the team vision and helping your individual rep see the value that they can add in the overall team and the overall culture that you're building. Okay, the second component is energy. And this is so, so important because it's something that you have to become aware of. And it's important to become aware of the energy that you have in the moment, because at any given time, you might have a PDI call coming in, or you might have a PC on your schedule, or you might have a team meeting that you're preparing for. And if your energy is low, it is your job as not only a manager, but also a leader to change your energy and to shift it in a way that's productive and positive for the people that you're leading. And it's important to make sure that your energy is high before any interaction with your team, especially in technical skill sets such as running a team meeting or running a training or running an interview. When you're on a one-on-one basis with your people, sure, your energy needs to be high, but it doesn't need to be as exuberant as it does when you're in an interview, training, or team meeting, when it's just you addressing an entire crowd. If your energy is low in that point, it has the ability to affect the entire environment, as opposed to if your energy is a little bit lower in a PC, that might not be as detrimental as it would be in a team meeting, training, or an interview environment. So when your energy is high, you have the ability to be more focused and on. So when you're wearing your manager hat, you have increased your ability to hold proper standards, to clarify and drive objectives. You have the ability to prioritize what needs to be done and to convey the expectations properly, because you have mental clarity that comes from having high energy. Now, where does energy manifest as a leader? Well, you have the ability to convey the vision of what you're building in an exciting and engaging way. Going back to what I just shared about the importance of having high energy when you're in a one-to-many situation, those are your moments where you really have the ability to affect the masses and therefore create a culture. Yes, it's possible to create a culture on a one-by-one basis, and we'll talk about that in our next call, but you really have the ability to enroll massive amounts of people in your vision when you can bring energy to a one-to-many situation. In addition to that, it's important to recognize that from an energy standpoint, you are responsible for uplifting your energy. And how you do that matters. So there's all of these different scientific processes that you can use to uplift your energy. And I would suggest looking into what Tony Robbins talks about when it comes to energy management, because he's really, really skilled in doing that. But a couple of quick ideas on how to uplift your energy. Number one is food. We talked briefly about this in our last call, but it's so incredibly important that you are eating properly before these big events. So before your interviews, making sure that you are not hungry, that you are not lethargic, and that you're eating some protein and, you know, drinking a lot of water. Getting enough sleep is so valuable. Turning your phone off at a certain time and not allowing the blue light to affect your REM sleep is so important, because you will feel the effects of it. Maybe not the first night, but I promise you by the 5th night, you'll begin to feel the effects, and it will naturally lower your energy. And then what Tony Robbins talks a lot about is changing your state. So if you have an interview coming up with 25 people scheduled in it, what a leader would do is recognize, where am I right now in terms of my energy? Okay, my energy is low. I'm gonna go outside for 10 minutes for a quick breath of fresh air to raise my natural state. And so recognizing that as a leader, it's important to protect your energy, because it allows you to convey the vision of what you're building. Yeah, just like Jacob said, motion creates emotion. Okay, the third component of a service first mindset is focus. So we've talked about time, energy, and now we're talking about focus. And you'll recognize that a lot of these components kind of intertwine with one another, but it's important to distinguish the difference of them slightly. So focus is to be completely present with whoever is in front of you. So you might have 30 minutes in your calendar from a time perspective, and you might have high energy, but if you've got this in front of you that's buzzing left and right, you can't really give your people your 100% focus. And going back to the importance of this, the people who are coming into your office, they're used to their phones going off left and right. They're used to their friends not fully being engaged with them. And so if you can separate yourself and become a leader in that sense of full engagement with your people, full focus with your people, you will be able to really break the mold, and you will be able to connect with your reps in ways that they've never really been connected with before from a leadership standpoint. So what's really important to recognize is that whenever you are doing one-on-one connection, that's when it's most important to be fully focused, because if you're one-on-one, that person can feel if you're not as focused as you should be. So what does that mean? That means that during PCs, put your cell phone on airplane mode. Or if you have an assistant manager, give them your cell phone if you're afraid of missing a PDI call. But I promise you that if you put your cell phone on airplane mode and you're giving your person that's in front of you 100% of your attention, any PDI call that you might miss in that process is worth the wait. And that's an important thing to recognize. Now, it's also important that during PDI and PR calling, that your laptop is only open to the necessary applications, because there are going to be times during these technical aspects of the business that you have to have difficult conversations, or that you have to ask a couple different questions in order to help somebody see the value of coming in for an interview, or help somebody see the value of getting to their next demo and not worrying about the no sale. So if you have Facebook open and you have YouTube open and you're on your PDI call and you're kind of clicking through and you're not fully focused on the person that's on the call with you, they will be able to feel that, and they'll begin to doubt your leadership ability. All right, so how does focus manifest as a manager? Well, again, the more focused you are, the deeper questions you can ask when you're in those moments of PCs and PDI. And the deeper questions that you ask, the better your ability to drive production through tangible tasks and action steps. Remember, the manager their role is to drive the bottom line. And so when you're on PDI and PR, or when you're on PDI calls and when you're in PCs, you have a person right in front of you who has a direct impact on your bottom line. And so to have focus with them and to really listen to them and be able to discern what they need help with the most will allow you to create a better plan of execution for them. Now, how does it manifest as a leader? Well, kind of similarly what I just said, it allows you to develop a deeper relationship with the individual, because it shows that you genuinely care enough to ask these deeper questions and to take the time to create a plan of execution. All right, the fourth component of a service-oriented mindset is curiosity. So we've talked already at length about, you know, the importance of asking questions and giving people your time and being focused. But it's one thing to just ask questions for the sake of asking questions. It's another thing to actually be curious about the person and to ask questions with the intention of kind of uncovering what's going on for them. And this is especially important when you are having, I would say, more difficult PCs or PDI. And the reason why is because someone might come to you with a problem that you might think is easily solvable, and your initial reaction might just be to go into solution mode, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, I've totally got that before, here's what I did, as opposed to curiosity mode, which is just to ask questions, because what you did might work for you, but might not work for them. So it's important that you take a step back, pause, and remember to be curious and ask questions. And this will really allow the person in front of you to feel like they are being heard, and that you, as their leader and manager, are making the effort to understand them. So where this shows up, I've already mentioned this, is in PDI and PCs. And remember, always ask clarifying questions. If they're saying something that you don't quite understand, ask them, hey, can you go a little deeper on that? I'm not sure I'm fully understanding what you're saying. That's a great first layer curiosity question. Hey, can you go a little bit deeper on that? I'm not sure I quite understand. And that's totally fine to do that. And in fact, it'll allow you to uncover more than what they maybe initially thought they were going to share with you. So how does this manifest in the manager role? Well, I've already said this before, but it gives you the ability to understand and motivate the individual to complete the given tasks at hand. So again, your job as a manager is to drive the bottom line. So when you're asking better questions and when you're getting a little bit deeper, you can shift and create plans of actions that maybe weren't your initial thought, but because you've asked more questions, you've now gotten more context. Therefore, you can give a more customized plan of action. And then how does this manifest as a leader? Well, when you are becoming curious, you actually have the ability to understand who that person is, and you can pair them with better people. You can get them field trained with somebody who's really going to connect with them, and you can begin to build this culture of people on your team helping one another, because you're able to pair them with people who they're going to be really cohesive with. That, I would say, is like a next level style thing to do, but that's what curiosity can lead you. It can lead you to creating really strong alliances amongst people, really strong inner team competition, because you've gotten to know the person on a deeper level, because you have really focused on being curious. Another thing that's really important to recognize about curiosity is that there will be times as you're going through your summer where your first instinct is to be critical. And what I mean by that is you're going to have a rep call in for PDI, and they're going to have all of these excuses and all of these reasons why they didn't make the sale. And your first instinct, it's natural, is to be like, oh, come on, dude, that's not even a legitimate excuse. And you're going to want to say that because to you, it's like the obvious answer. But it's important to be curious before critical, and rather than jumping into what you would have done or what they should have done, it's asking them valuable questions to help them kind of work through it on their own. I love the phrase, be curious before critical. And it's something that I would just remember, because it can show up in so many different areas of the business of just importance. You know, hey, listen, it's not necessarily them trying to challenge you. It's just that they don't quite understand. And so it's your job to not get into defense mode, but more so get into question and curiosity mode. The fifth component of the service first mindset is empathy. So quick recap here, we've gone over time, energy, focus, curiosity, and now we're covering empathy. And empathy is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of your reps and take the time to listen and understand. So as you can tell, a lot of these components, again, they overlap with one another, but where does empathy show up in your business? I mean, it shows up in all the one-on-one conversations. It also shows up in the difficult up or out conversations. It comes up in even just team meeting in general, if you're trying to relate to your team as to where they currently are in the week, in the year, in the month, doesn't matter. But having empathy is just taking a step back and giving yourself the ability to be compassionate and understand where your reps are. So how does this manifest as a manager? Well, when you take the time to put yourself in your rep's shoes as a manager, you can determine individual timelines. So again, your job as a manager is to drive the bottom line, but the way that you drive one person isn't going to be the same way that you drive another person. And so having empathy and having curiosity allows you to see what the other person is seeing and then help them create a timeline that works for them. How does it manifest as a leader? Well, having empathy, this is really important here. This creates psychological safety. So when you can show empathy for your people, they're going to feel more safe with you and they're going to feel more psychologically safe. So we're going to do a quick little teaching on psychological safety. So this phrase, well, I don't really know where it came from, but there was a study that was done by Google that wanted to determine what made teams work the best together. And they really weren't sure what they were going to find, but I think a lot of people that were doing the study thought it was going to be, who was on the team or who was the leader. And what they actually found was that the teams that worked the best together were the teams that had psychological safety. And so what psychological safety is number one, the feeling of being heard and understood, and the feeling of being able to be yourself without fear of judgment. So again, psychological safety is the feeling of being heard and understood, and the feeling of being able to be yourself without fear of judgment. And so when you, as the leader, can bring empathy to every one of your conversations, you are creating psychological safety on an individual level, which will bleed into the group as a whole. And so what you'll find is that your group, your team, your office will begin to work better together, support one another more, and be more excited about the team goals because they're working so well together from an individual role. All right, so that was all about the mindset and kind of a discussion about the difference between a manager and a leader. I know I threw a lot at you, and I want to pause here and say that you don't have to be great at all of this stuff. I would say being good at most of it is probably in your best interest, but I'm not expecting all of you to know all of this stuff right now in your current place of preparation. But again, going back to what I shared in the very beginning, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is to bring awareness to some of the areas that you can decide to focus on in preparation. So maybe something that you do after listening to what I just shared is that you practice being more focused in your one-on-one communication with your friends. You practice putting your phone on airplane mode. You practice being more curious. You practice increasing your energy, and you practice having empathy. You don't need to know all of the things I just talked about. But again, it's just bringing the awareness and helping you create a game plan for yourself as to what you want to start focusing on as you're prepping to become a branch manager. The last thing I want to touch on before we bring on our amazing panelists is the people skills that really help you become a leader. So we talked about the mindset. Now, these are the people skills, and people skills are often described as the tactical skills that elevate the effectiveness of your technical skills. So I talked a little bit about this in some of my live messages that I've given over the last couple of months, but you have these technical skills, and the better your mindset, the better your technical skills the better results your technical skills will create. Same thing, the better your tactical skills, the more your technical skills will be elevated. So technical skills are the most important thing to really learn right now, but mindset's important to hone because it makes the effectiveness of your technical skills more prevalent, and the same thing with your tactical skills. Another phrase for people skills are interpersonal skills. And interpersonal skills are often what land most college graduates their first job if they don't have great resume experience. But here's the thing, and this is really exciting. You all, because of your branch experience, will have great resume experience. So having great interpersonal skills on top of your resume and your business experience, it will create the potential to start higher than an entry-level role out of college, or at least start higher than an entry-level salary. So just important to recognize the value of interpersonal skills on top of what you're learning from a management perspective in branch. There is an article that I read that I'm going to share with all of you this week from a website called Resume Genius, and they said, strong interpersonal skills are a key indicator of success in a working environment, as benefits include the ability to cooperate with teammates to solve difficult problems, as well as simply enhancing your popularity around the office. Now, I don't think you need to be necessarily popular in the office, but it is valuable to have interpersonal skills because it really does allow you to cooperate with your team and solve better problems, which will ultimately lead you to promotions and raises and all that good stuff. So what is the baseline for developing interpersonal skills? I believe that the baseline is to improve your EQ. You've all heard this before, but EQ stands for emotional intelligence. And unlike IQ, EQ can actually be changed and improved upon through awareness and practice. So they say that the IQ, it's, you really can't raise your IQ, but you can lower your IQ and you're kind of stuck in this bubble and whatever. Your EQ, you can really work on and you can grow. So there are 4 components of your emotional intelligence. Quick definition of it, it is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. It's a mouthful of a definition. I'll read it for you one more time in case you're taking notes. It is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. I'm going to do my best to break it down for you, but remember that we have question and answer time after our panelists, so you can always dig deeper and ask more questions there. So the 4 components of emotional intelligence. Number 1, self-awareness. It is the ability to know yourself and understand your feelings. A component of self-awareness is self-assessment, the ability to understand your strengths and weaknesses and their effects. And why this is so important, everybody, is because when you understand your strengths and weaknesses, you have the ability to play to your strengths. You've heard us talk about this before in Vector, but when you can really play to your strengths, I believe that's where there's an exponential growth factor. I know for me, one of my weaknesses is 100% math. So you'll never see me raise my hand to do any accounting problem, to do anything that involves, Excel spreadsheets and numbers, because that is not my strength. And as a matter of fact, it is definitely a weakness of mine, and it will probably lead to false reporting and therefore could lead to, poor results down the road. So I'm going to always play to my strengths, and it's important to understand what those are. And part of being emotionally intelligent is having that self-awareness of what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Second component, self-management. It's the ability to have self-control over your emotions and being able to express your feelings in a controlled manner and or in an appropriate setting. Let me make a very important distinction here. It does not mean suppressing your emotions or feelings, but it means controlling them. So going back to what I shared about the curious before critical, sometimes there will be situations in your office where a rep is challenging you. Maybe not intentionally on their part, maybe intentionally, but they might be doing something that in your mind is like, why would you be doing this? And your initial reaction is to be critical, but part of being emotionally intelligent is to recognize that it's not their fault that they don't know what they don't know, and instead you as a leader, it is your job to first off control yourself. If you're angry, don't show it. But again, be curious before critical, take a few deep breaths, and just really kind of be level-headed. That's kind of where that phrase comes in, is level headedness. And then being able to express your feelings in a controlled manner, it's just not having these crazy outbursts, right? And I think it's important to, give yourself a space where you can let it out. So whether that is going for a run, talking to your parents, talking to me, going boxing, those are places where you can really let it out if you're having a stressful day. But you've probably heard this before, you never want to complain down. You never want to complain across, you only want to complain up. And I can be that person for you if you're having a tough day and you need to get your emotions out. In addition to the emotional management, self-management also has to do with taking initiative. It's the ability to be self-motivated, intrinsically motivated, and to be resilient. So self-motivated and intrinsically motivated are kind of the same thing, but it also is the ability to be adaptable and to change courses when necessary and be resilient when you have to be. It's being solution-oriented as opposed to just focusing on the outcome, but being able to see a problem as a set of solutions as opposed to something that's going to stop you in your tracks. And another component of self-management is optimism. It's having a positive outlook, hoping for the best, and preparing for success. So those are the first two components, self-awareness and self-management. Those have to do with you as the individual. Now, the second two components are social awareness, which is the ability to have empathy. We've already talked at length about empathy and the importance of it, but it's, again, to understand and acknowledge other people's emotions and helping others feel heard and seen. It's also the ability to explain yourself well and be aware of how you're being understood and perceived. Now, I'll be honest with you right now, when you're giving a Zoom message like this, like I'm doing right now, it's really hard to have social awareness because I'm not even looking at your faces, I'm looking at my notes. And so that's why occasionally I'll stop and remind you all that there will be a question and answer session at the end, because I understand that I go through things quickly. I have the social awareness that what I'm sharing might not be landing with everybody. And so I'm making sure that everybody on this call knows that there will be time to ask clarifying questions. And the same thing goes when you're running training or you're running a team meeting and you're teaching something and you can tell that the people in front of you are not quite understanding it. That is having social awareness. The final component of EQ, emotional intelligence, is relationship management. And this is the ability to lead inspirationally by becoming a mentor, role model, or authority figure. Now, I think relationship management is probably one of the more difficult components of emotional intelligence to really grasp and improve on, but it's something that as you go throughout your branch experience, you will begin to naturally improve upon. So there's 4 components of relationship management. Number 1 is developing positive influence within group settings. So it's being able to speak up in a respectful manner and to share relevant content. It's not just screaming out whatever you think is important to say in that moment, even if it's relevant or not. It's being respectable and being able to share in a way that really lands with the group. 2, it's teamwork. It's being able to work well with others. 3, it's developing others. It's having that service first mentality. And then 4, it's conflict management. Now, this 4th component of relationship management is really the reason why I say this component of EQ is probably the most difficult one to really learn. It's because conflict management falls underneath relationship management. And for most people, this is what scares them. And it's probably one of the hardest skills to develop and also the most valuable, because to be human is to have conflict. And so as you go throughout life, even after Vector, you're still going to be faced with conflict. And it's important to recognize that confrontation is not a bad thing if you know how to do it well with empathy, compassion, a clear goal in mind, and an objective in mind. And the better you become with relationship management and the more emotionally intelligent you become, the better you can handle conflict with really positive outcomes. And by being a good conflict manager, you have the skills to improve relationships that are going through conflict as opposed to deteriorate relationships. And you also have the ability to settle misunderstandings in a respectful way. And misunderstandings don't need to always be really bad. They're just a simple misunderstanding and they can be solved with a conversation. but oftentimes people get really in their heads about them and they don't know what to do, what to say. And so they just kind of let it go. And then it usually festers and the misunderstanding becomes a lot bigger than it needs to be. So you'll notice that as you work on honing and improving your EQ, these other skills I'm about to mention will become a lot easier. So number one, effective communicator. So EQ is I would say the starting point in terms of really honing your interpersonal skills. And then these last two skills, which I'm not really going to go in depth on because I want to save the time for the question and answer here. But the next two skills that I want you all to just become aware of and then do your own work outside of these calls to really work on is effective communication. So the more socially aware and the better you are with relationship management, the more effective you will be able to communicate with others. And that will really impact your one-on-one communication with your team. And it will also impact your ability to influence your team. And then the second thing is to be a true professional. And why does true professional fall under interpersonal skills? Well, it's because it conveys trust and comfort. And trust and comfort are not technical skills that you can learn by, doing a 1, 2, 3 step thing. Being a true professional is a way of being, and it allows people to trust you and comfort you. And people will naturally gravitate towards focused and stable people because it gives them the sense of forward movement. And humans naturally want to move forward. I mean, historically, we never stay put, right? We're always migrating over the years, and we always expect to grow. Every year, we expect to get smarter. We expect to get more stable in our job. We expect to get raises and promotions. So humans expect to grow. And so we as humans look up to people who have a vision, who are leaders, and who move forward with excitement, with passion, and with true professionalism. And it's important to remember that when a new rep starts at Vector Marketing, they're not expecting to make friends with their manager. They're expecting to learn from and be led by their manager. They're not expecting to meet a friend. They're expecting to meet a professional, which is why I really believe that being a true professional is a valuable interpersonal skills that will allow you to amplify your results in all areas. You are not letting your reps down by not being cool or being their friend. You might eventually become their friend, but it should not be your first intent to do so. Your first intent should be to be a true professional and to inspire trust and comfort amongst your reps so they will follow you and they will believe in the vision that you're sharing with them, and they'll go to you when they need to create goals and standards and plans for themselves. And we're going to talk a lot more about how that shows up from a cultural standpoint in our next call. But what I want to do now is I want to bring on our speakers for today. So, and again, we'll have a Q&A session after this. I can stay on for a couple minutes after our call here. But the speakers that we have on today, we have Jakub Mysliwiec from the Central Region. Jakub ran a 200K plus branch office last summer, and I'm so excited to learn from him and hear what he has to say about people skills. And he actually shared a story with me about how his ability to create relationships within his office and outside of his office led to some lower rent, which I think everybody will probably be really excited to hear about. And then our second panelist is Grant Phillips from the Eastern Region. Grant ran a 125K plus office, and what's really fascinating about Grant is that his relationship building skills and his people skills were so strong that he only had 3 people quit on him the entire summer, which is huge. So that being said, let's bring on Grant and Jakub. I see Jakub's on here, but I don't see Grant. Oh yeah, there he is. Okay, cool. Okay, Grant, I'm gonna have you start, and then Jakub, I'm gonna have you follow here. All right, so first question, Grant, as you were prepping to open up your office in the summer, how did you hone your leadership? Now, this is important. I'm not asking about management skills. I'm not asking about the technical skills, but I'm asking about the leadership skills during the spring.
Right. So during the spring, I would say starting off with personal growth is definitely the first route to honing your own leadership skills. So like starting off building habits, kind of like how you were talking about last week, reading, getting coaching calls with as many people as you can. That's something that I really did, is I reached out to as many high-level people as I could, and obviously not all of them respond, but some of them will. And getting coaching calls with them and picking their brain, building your leadership skills that way. setting goals, fitness goals, anything like that, just personal growth. And then once I have all of that, I just practice it on my friends. So all the friends that I have around me, I wouldn't treat them like representatives, obviously, but just like practicing what you learn in TLA, like love languages, and just using it to strengthen your connection and stuff.
Yeah, I love that you did that. And I think it's also important to let everybody know you don't have to tell your friends you're practicing on them, right? That'd be a little silly, but just practicing, if you recognize that one of your friends, their love language is acts of service, well, start doing small things for them and see how they begin to react to you. And that might show you the value of actually learning and understanding love language. All right, Jacob, same question. As you were prepping to open up your office in the summer, how did you hone your leadership skills during the spring?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me be on this call. I truly appreciate it. But I'd say that one of the biggest things was just similar to what Grant did by like practicing on his friends. What I did was I started a book club with my roommates, and that like really kind of like allowed me to take initiative and like guide them through like the book and what we were doing with the book. And it was always a book that was on a personal growth topic, so that made it a lot easier for me to gain some more leadership skills. That's one example. What I also did was I hosted meetings, kind of like little local leadership meetings on campus with all our local students here at the U of I. And I just taught them some stuff. It wasn't even like vector related sometimes, but it was like value that would increase my leadership ability. So just constantly getting better by teaching people, because when you teach people, you learn it twice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure also by teaching people, it made you a stronger communicator. It made you a stronger teacher. And then therefore, you probably ran better team meetings come summertime because of the experience that you had in the spring.
Factual.
Cool. Great. Okay, next question. Grant, as you were prepping to open your office in the summer, how did you hone your people skills in the spring? So, interpersonal skills, what we just spent the second half of the teaching component talking about. And then thinking about the interpersonal skills, the people skills that you were working on, which ones do you think attributed the most to your ability to lead effectively?
Yeah, so very similar to the first answer, just practicing on my friends. I was like practicing all of them. Any ROTC people that I could like take in and like mentor, I would practice that. But the most effective skill that I would say that I learned over the spring was the ability to listen to people, and like genuinely listening. And that really enabled me to be able to connect easily with people. And I learned that over the summer, if I could listen to like representatives and stuff during the training, I would be able to like connect the training to them like personally. So they're all getting value out of it individually and nobody feels left out during the training. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you distinguished listening from genuinely listening, because again, we talk theoretically about, the importance of listening, but are you actually listening? Are you actually focusing and making sure that you have awareness as to whether or not you are actually listening, and then practicing that. Now, Grant, you mentioned that you practiced on your friends. Can you share exactly what you practiced?
Yeah, so it's just like building relationships with them. Like, I guess just socializing more. Like, I'm not the person that gets out all the time and socializes, but just like socializing more with people, being the person to start the conversation instead of like having people walk up to me. Just like taking that extra step to connect with people.
Yeah, and that's a really valuable point, because tying it back to how it will show up in your summer, when you have interviewees coming in, applicants come in, your job as a manager is to make them feel comfortable. And so you're the one that has to start the conversation. They will never, well, they might, but it's very rare that they're going to actually start the conversation with you. So building that confidence and being able to drive a conversation forward is really valuable from an interviewing perspective. Okay, Jacob, what about you? How did you hone your people skills in the spring, and what skills do you think attributed the most to your ability to lead effectively?
Cool. So one of the first things that comes to mind is just like, I asked myself, how do you get good at a demo? And that's just doing a lot of demos, right? So if you really want to improve your people skills, you got to talk to more people, and just like, talk to people at a grocery store. Just like do everything that you can to talk to people, whether it's like a professor, whether it's just a friend, whether it's the new kid in class, like whatever it is, just keep practicing that. A book that I highly recommend is called How to Talk to Anyone. by Lyle Lowndes. It's 92 ways to talk to people. It's kind of just like little tips and tricks on how to improve your influence and communication skills. And that book, it was like the chapters were really short because it was 92 methods, but it was highly effective in allowing me to coach people. And then that second question there on what skills really allowed me to lead effectively, I would say definitely listening, just like what Grant talked about. So instead of just hearing them, I'm actually genuinely listening to them, letting them speak everything. I don't even like talk until like they're waiting for me to talk, because I just allow them to pour everything out, and then I just communicate that.
Yeah. And listening is also a skill that amplifies empathy too, because it allows you, while you're listening, to really hear what they're saying. And oftentimes, as you're hearing what they're saying and you're understanding what they're saying, your brain will naturally put yourself in their shoes. And so your response, as you become a better listener, will become more empathetic. Therefore, they will actually appreciate your response more. And that's just a really valuable skill to be learning. Okay, now what about in terms of your management training and skills? So we talked in the beginning of the call about how as you get better at your people skills and your interpersonal skills, and as you work on your emotional intelligence, that will affect your ability to manage and run the systems in your office. So how did you see those people skills kind of affect your ability to manage, Grant?
Yeah, so whenever I was able to actually listen and communicate with people like one-on-one personally, I noticed that they started to pay attention to more of what I was actually saying during trainings, even during interviews. If you can build a quick connection right at the beginning, they're more likely to listen to what you're saying instead of just kind of paying attention to background noise. So like I was saying earlier, just being able to communicate, it builds relationships and really has people start to listen to you as well during the trainings and interviews.
Yeah, that's valuable, because in most situations, when you start the trend of listening, then they will return the favor of listening and therefore allow you to have more influence over training them in the best way possible. So I love that you mentioned that. Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that came to mind here was confidence. As my management training and people skills and leadership skills were all getting better, that allowed me to be more confident. And when you have that confidence, you can have that energy that you were talking about earlier, where you're not looking for a script or looking at a script, but you're fully able to channel your energy and dial in and be fully present with an individual. And I feel like that's very effective.
Mm-hmm. And confidence, for everyone out there, where confidence can really come if you feel like you're lacking is from self-awareness. So being able to understand what your strengths are, that plays into becoming more confident. And so if you're, just like what Jacob's saying, the importance of confidence and allowing to convey vision to the people and really help his people, if you're kind of struggling in that department, it comes down to really working on your self-awareness. And if you need help with that, I'm here to help. Okay, we have a lot of questions, but in the essence of time, I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A. And Jacob and Grant, if you've got to go, I understand. But I think this is a really important question. I mentioned in the beginning of the call that, this idea of servant leadership and the service-first mindset, I think we all understand it and know it in theory, but I think any first-year branch or any senior branch on this call can attest to how it can be at times very challenging to maintain that service-oriented mindset when you're focusing on the CPO. So the final question here for Grant and Jacob is, learning your role as a servant leader is, again, usually really difficult for new branches. Can you touch on how you continue to focus on serving your people even when results in CPO weren't going your way?
Yeah, so this is actually something that I really actually struggled with at one point last summer, especially towards like the beginning part of it. I got very CPO hungry at the very beginning of the summer, and it was because the results weren't going my way. I was consistently having like $6,000 weeks, and I saw other people having much larger weeks. And I was actually fortunate enough to have a representative, his name was Harrison, come up to me and talk to me and basically called me out for like not paying attention to him individually. And he was one of the 3 people that actually ended up quitting. And the reason why is because he wanted an internship And I just kept pushing the TLA, like you can do TLA, because I knew that it would look good for me. And I wanted him to sell more. And instead of like helping him get his actual goal and listening to what he wanted, I pushed him away basically. And once I realized that I have to listen to them, I went from like 6K weeks to instantly like 15 to 20K weeks just from like switching that mindset. So the conversation I had with him definitely changed my summer over listening and giving them what they need.
Yeah. So sometimes it comes down to having to lose somebody who could be great to actually have that mindset or that way of being really stick with you and understand the importance of it. Jakub, what about you?
This is my favorite question thus far. Being a servant leader is massive, and even when results in CPO don't go our way, I've got a lot of tips for you guys. But number one, I would say if you don't have a lot in withholdings, make sure you put as much in withholdings as you can. So if that means selling during school, definitely sell. But why I say put a lot of money in withholdings, because when you have money, you don't really look at how can you make more money. You just care about people, and we're a people business, and it's all about that one, what's in it for them mindset. So one thing that I've really been focusing on since my first branch summer is not looking at people as CPO or a number, as the unique individuals that they are. The results in CPO and income, they're a byproduct of people. So as long as we focus on people, continue to add value, they're just, they're going to do better themselves. So just realize that you don't need CPO, you don't need results. When you have that need type of energy, it pushes away the thing that you keep saying you want. So, this is just something I've been really learning recently, but when you say you need a better relationship or you need better grades, you're actually pushing that away. And what you've got to focus on is everything that creates a good relationship. You attract who you are and what you do on a daily basis and who your character is.
I love that. And that kind of exemplifies what we talked about at our last call about the importance of focusing on your inputs as opposed to becoming obsessed with your outputs. And like you were saying, when you don't have any money in your withholdings, it's easy to get kind of obsessed with the outputs because that is what creates your mission statement. And so in the early stages of the summer, things don't always go your way. And we talked a lot about that in the first call about how, it's a matter of sticking with the systems and focusing on the habits that you've created and trusting that the outputs will come and knowing that people are big component of your input. I mean, they are the component of your input. They're the ones who are selling out there until you start selling yourself. That focusing on them and fixing your mindset around them is the number one key to really amplifying the outputs when they're not going your way. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It is 5:03 my time, so I want to respect everyone's time. Grant and Jacob, if you guys have to jump off, you are more than welcome to. But I would love to open this up for question and answer. I can stay on here for as long as you all need me to, but I would love to open it up for question and answer, whether it's to Jacob, Grant, or myself, but I'd love to just give people the space to clarify, ask, dig deeper. All right, I'm gonna ask Jacob and Grant, or I guess Grant jumped, oh no, they're both on. I'm going to ask Jacob and Grant one more question here because we did have a lot of questions that we talked about. What resources, and I love giving advice, I love giving book and podcast recommendations because again, like I shared in the beginning of this call, my expectation or my objective of these calls is to bring awareness to things that are important, and then it's your job to dig deeper and to find resources out there that kind of help you learn through these things. So Jacob and Grant, what resources would you recommend to first year branches who are looking to get better at maybe emotional intelligence and leadership skills?
Yeah, so there's actually a book that was given to me by a very close friend within the business. And it's called It's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And the book literally, like, super high performance mindset inside the book. And it was really able to like change my life and change my mindset from thinking like smaller to thinking bigger about myself personally. Not being so down on myself and understanding that I'm very actually privileged with what I have. And then using that to like fuel myself to work even harder. So yeah, that's an amazing book and I recommend it for everybody.
And on that note, I recommend getting the audiobook because
Yeah.
David Goggins, like it's almost like a podcast, but also a book. It's really good. Yeah, Audible is so fire. You're right. All right, Jacob, what about you?
For me, I would say a few good resources. If you guys haven't dialed into the Changing Lives, Selling Knives podcast, it's a great resource. I would also say the Ace Weekly podcast, MFCEO podcast, Max Out podcast. I like to do a lot of things that are of net time. If you haven't heard of it, net time is no extra time needed. So what I'll do is like when I'm driving, I'll listen to a podcast. When I'm showering, I'll listen to a podcast. And just like feed my mind constantly with positive things because, obviously that's how we get better.
Yeah, I love that concept of net time. It's really valuable. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Okay, so here's a question. Jacob, you mentioned that you had lots of tips for honing your service mindset. What are a few ways of checking yourself when you are in those hard moments?
Cool. So as far as when you're in those hard moments, what I do is I realize that this is a tip that I learned from my SC2 push, one of my first summers on the job. But run your own race. Everyone's at a different point in the business. Everyone's at a different level of experience. But when you're running your own race, you only focus on what you could do for your people and not like results. When you look at numbers and results, yeah, that's a no-no. I know Colton Horn always preaches that he did not even know what they were at for the summer until like someone told them. And that's the exact mindset that I recommend having for that servant mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And another answer to that, AJ, is the minute that you start looking at your people as dollar signs and CPO, and I know it might be hard to imagine yourself doing it now, but you'll know when you're doing it in the summertime. That's that minute to check yourself and say, all right, I'm going to step back. I'm going to practice some appreciation and gratitude. And I'm going to remind myself of why I'm doing this in the first place. And I can promise you, well, actually, I don't know. But from my experience talking with branches, 98% of people are doing this to give other people the same experience that they've been given. And make some money along the way, sure. But you have the ability to make a lot of money at the end of the summer when you sell personally. So like Jacob said, don't focus on the results, focus on the people, and you will be amazed at what will happen when you do that. Okay, Michaela asked, can we dig a little deeper on the idea of how to be a true professional and still making sure that the environment is psychologically safe? Yes, we can. And I appreciate you asking that because the second half of my message, I kind of cut short because I realized I was going way too much over time. I still haven't figured out how to keep messages under 30 minutes. So I appreciate all of the grace you guys are giving me. So let's talk about being a true professional. So going back to what I shared about psychological safety, let's start there. So the definition of psychological safety is the ability to feel heard and understood, and the ability to be yourself out of fear of judgment. So that is when you as an individual feel psychologically safe. Think about all the environments that you've been in, the ones that you feel like you can say whatever's on your mind, you can share thoughts and emotions, you can be vulnerable, and you're not going to be judged for anything that you said. That's probably the environments you most thrive in and feel the best in. And I think about my own personal experience with my girlfriends. Like, I have a group of friends that I know I can be my total self in, and I enjoy spending my time with them because I feel safe in that environment. So that's psychological safety. How do you create that in a vector office while still maintaining a professional attitude? Well, I don't think it's an either or type thing. I think it's actually something that can very much complement each other. So the first thing is to recognize that by being a professional, you are giving people the space to be themselves, and you are the leader. So they're looking up to you to set the standard and set the tone. So if you as the leader are giving your people the time to share their thoughts, like what Jacob had shared about how he would let his people just talk to him and he would just be there to listen, that's something a true professional would do. Somebody who's not a true professional would listen and wait until they have the perfect time to interject because they think they've got the answer. When in reality, they might not have the answer, but they can ask a better question and dig a little bit deeper. So a true professional is somebody who understands that they have to ask questions first and give their people the space to express themselves. And you are the one that is setting that example. Now, the second thing, this feeling of being able to be themselves without fear of judgment. Well, I think Vector is pretty good at doing that, or at least from what I've seen from my vantage point, is we have people of all backgrounds, all shapes, all sizes, all genders, all sexual orientations. And for the most part, I think our managers are really good at giving everybody an opportunity to thrive in this environment. And so if you are someone who is really looking to create a psychologically safe space, it's important to recognize that every person that comes in your door is an individual, and it's your job as a leader to honor their individuality. Does that make sense, Michaela? Did I miss anything that you wanted me to dig deeper on? Because there's a lot that we can dig on with being a true professional, but I wanted to make sure that I was tying it into the psychological safety aspect.
Yeah. I just wanted kind of more like a confirmation that I was understanding the process of that properly. Because obviously when it comes to people's minds and what their allowances for their personality is, it's like, it can be very touchy and delicate.
Sure. Did that answer your question, or do you have any other questions about that?
No, that answered my question.
Okay. All right, cool. Any other questions from either, I know Jacob's still on. Anything else?
I have a question.
Hi, Christina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I have a question on just how do you go from giving them that space for them to feel comfortable without, I know that I felt a lot of times like I was their like therapist basically, like we play a lot of roles as a branch manager, but how do you throw that line where it's like you're sharing too much or you're telling me things I shouldn't necessarily know as a manager? Like, how do you do that separation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is a case-by-case basis for sure. There's no cookie cutter answer, but I think it comes down to how you set up the one-on-one conversations. Now, I doubt you would have a situation where somebody at a team meeting raises their hand and starts to spill their guts and be really almost oversharing. But that might happen in certain cases, and that person needs to work on their social awareness, and that's just part of being emotionally intelligent. And that can come from setting standards in your office of, hey, listen, like if you've got a personal problem that you need to share, come to me directly. So when someone comes to you directly, you can actually set the stage of, hey, I really want to be here for you. I want you to feel comfortable to share what you want with me. However, I do want us to come to a mutual, I want us to work through something. I don't want us to just rant about something. So if you feel like you need to rant, I will give you the space to do it. And I'll give you 5 minutes to just go off. And then I'm going to ask your permission at the 5-minute mark for us to actually create some action steps around that. So that's kind of equal parts wearing the leader hat and wearing the manager hat, where from a leader perspective, it's about the relationship, but from a manager perspective, it's about kind of moving the process along. So again, it's how you set up the conversation of, hey, I really want to give you the space to kind of work through some things. And I'm here for you if you really need to kind of get things off your chest. And if it means that you need to rant, that's fine. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to rant. And then at the 5-minute mark, I'm going to ask your permission to kind of move through and work through some things with you. And you can even go as far as setting a timer and kind of make a little bit of a joke about it. And then of course, like if you get to the 5-minute mark and that person is in tears and like you really got to work through some things, and then that might be, the next step, but you can always stop yourself and be like, hey, and I've done this with coaching clients before, where they start to get a little bit too deep, where I'm not even qualified. I'm not a therapist. I'm not qualified to go there with them. And I say, hey, I hear what you're saying, and I really want to be there for you, to be there to support you. I'm not a therapist, and I think that this could be something that would be really helpful to bring to a therapist. Have you ever considered going to therapy? And seeing what they say. Now, maybe that's not the right way you say it. It might be like, hey, I'm hearing you. Have you ever considered going to therapy? And asking it that way, as opposed to saying, I'm not a therapist. So I take back what I just said. I would say, hey, I really hear you, and I'm here for you. Have you ever considered going to therapy? And that's how I would start that conversation. And if they would be like, yes, but, or no, I haven't, you could say, I want to be able to support you, but I think that what you're going through could really use somebody who has like actual training on this. Because I can tell you what I think, but I'm not sure if it's going to be in your best interest. And I'm all about being in your best interest. I think that's how I would handle the situation, Christina. But of course, it is a case-by-case basis. And I think it goes back to the more you hone your emotional intelligence skills, the better you'll be able to handle each of those different situations. Does that make sense? Was that a good answer? Was that what you were looking for? Okay, cool. Any other questions on the call? Cool. Well, I appreciate all of you staying on for the last couple of minutes here. If you have any other questions, feel free to post in the Branch Impact group. But I always appreciate people sticking around, trying to learn, doing their best. And I look forward to seeing you all on our next call, which is February 27th. It's a new date. Okay, bye, everybody.
Thanks, Shelby.
Yep, bye.